Welcome to Terrors Untold.
It was 2016 when I was 17 years old, and Halloween was always the highlight of my year. This particular Halloween, my friends and I were invited to a party at a house on the outskirts of town, a place rumored to be haunted. As we approached the house, I felt an unsettling chill in the air that made my skin prickle. The dim lighting and creepy decorations, fake cobwebs, skeletons, and grimacing jack-o'-lanterns set the stage for an evening I'd never forget. As the night wore on, the music blared and laughter filled the air. I danced and joked with my friends, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I kept glancing around, feeling like someone or something was watching me. My anxiety peaked when I noticed a figure standing in the corner, someone not dressed for the party. This person was wearing plain, dark clothing, their eyes piercing and fixated on me. Needing a breather, I stepped outside for a moment, hoping the cool air would calm my nerves. As I leaned against the porch railing, I heard a faint whisper behind me. I turned around, but no one was there. Just as I was about to head back inside, the figure from the party appeared before me, their face hidden behind a grotesque mask. "Are you enjoying the party?" they asked, their voice sending shivers down my spine. I opened my mouth to respond, but the words caught in my throat. Just then, my friend Sarah came outside and the figure vanished into the shadows. I quickly recounted what had happened, but Sarah laughed it off, thinking I was just trying to scare her. Returning inside, the party felt different. Everyone was laughing, but it seemed forced, the atmosphere growing increasingly tense. I noticed more masked figures lurking in the corners, their eyes glinting with an unsettling light. My unease deepened when I heard a sudden scream that cut through the music. The laughter stopped, and we all turned to see a girl in a costume looking pale and terrified. She pointed toward a door at the back of the house, slightly ajar. "Something's in there!" she screamed. Chaos erupted as everyone rushed to the exits, pushing and shoving to get outside. Determined to uncover what was happening, I grabbed Sarah's hand and pulled her toward the door. We crept down the dim hallway, our footsteps echoing in the silence. The door led to a small, dark room filled with old furniture draped in dust-covered sheets. In the corner, I saw a figure hunched over, mumbling to itself. I stepped closer, my heart racing, trying to make out who it was. When the figure turned to face me, I recognized it as the same person from outside, their eyes wide and unblinking. A chilling smile stretched unnaturally across their face. "You shouldn't have come here," they whispered, and dread washed over me. In a panic, the room flooded with partygoers who had been standing just outside, watching us. I felt trapped as they closed in, and I turned to Sarah, her face pale with fear. "We need to get out of here," she screamed, but the crowd wouldn't let us leave. In desperation, I pushed through, dragging Sarah along with me. We stumbled out the door and into the cool night air, where I realized the party had transformed into a frenzied gathering. The laughter sounded manic, the figures danced wildly, and I caught a glimpse of the dark figure standing at the edge of the yard, watching us. We sprinted down the street, not daring to look back. My heart raced as we reached my house, and that night I learned that sometimes the scariest monsters aren't in costumes. They are hidden among us, their true nature lurking in the shadows. In 2020, when I was 19, Halloween night brought back childhood excitement. My friends and I were eager to experience the thrill of trick-or-treating one last time as teenagers. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I donned my skeleton costume, ready for the night's adventures. The neighborhood buzzed with laughter, kids ran around with candy buckets, and I felt a rush of nostalgia. After visiting a few houses, I decided to take a shortcut down a side street leading to an old, abandoned house. I'd heard rumors about it, how it used to be a vibrant home before a tragic event cast it into shadow. The evening sky darkened, and as I walked, the atmosphere shifted. As I reached the old house, I spotted a figure standing at the end of the driveway. It was a small boy dressed as a skeleton, just like me. He stood unnaturally still, clutching a candy bucket that seemed too large for him. His face was hidden behind a mask, and an unsettling feeling washed over me. "Hey, are you okay?" I called out, my voice shaky. He didn't respond, just pointed toward the house with a skeletal finger. "Do you want to go trick-or-treating?" I asked, hoping to break the silence. He nodded slowly, and despite the chill that ran down my spine, I felt compelled to follow him. We walked up to the front door, which creaked ominously as it opened. Inside, the air was stale, thick with dust and decay. The darkness enveloped us, and I struggled to see the shapes of old furniture draped in white sheets. I turned to the boy, but he had vanished. "Hey, where did you go?" I shouted, panic rising in my chest. No response. My heart raced as I stepped further inside, the floor creaking beneath my weight. It felt like the house was alive, watching me. Suddenly I heard a faint whisper echoing from deeper within. "Help me!" The voice sounded desperate, like a child's plea for aid. I felt a pull, a need to find the source, even though every instinct screamed at me to leave. I moved through the dimly lit rooms, following the voice that seemed to guide me. Entering a small bedroom, I was greeted by a chilling sight. In the corner sat a dusty old doll, its eyes staring blankly at me. I turned to leave, my heart pounding, but then I saw him, the boy in the skeleton costume, standing right behind me. His mask was cracked now, revealing a pale face that shifted between innocence and something far more sinister. "Help me," he whispered again, but this time it sounded like a warning. I stumbled backward, fear gripping my throat. I turned and ran, bursting out of the house and onto the street. I glanced back to see the boy standing in the doorway, his hollow eyes fixed on me, a sinister smile spreading across his lips. I didn't stop running until I reached my friends. They were gathered at the corner, laughing and munching on candy, completely oblivious to the terror I had just experienced. When I told them, they laughed it off, thinking I was trying to scare them. That night, as I lay in bed, I couldn't shake the feeling that the boy had followed me. I had ventured into a haunted house.
I decided to visit a pumpkin patch that had gained a reputation for being haunted. This place was famous for its enormous pumpkins and charming atmosphere, but as Halloween approached, eerie stories began to circulate. I went with a group of friends, excited to experience the festivities. The sun began to set as we arrived, casting long shadows across the fields. The pumpkins looked inviting, yet an overwhelming sense of dread lingered in the air, as if the ground was holding on to something dark. After picking a few pumpkins, we heard whispers about a haunted hayride starting soon. Intrigued, we decided to hop on. As we boarded the old wagon, I felt a mix of excitement and foreboding. The ride took us deep into the pumpkin patch where the moonlight barely illuminated the path. The guide began sharing stories about how, years ago, a group of children had disappeared during Halloween, their spirits now said to wander the fields, searching for their lost pumpkins. As we ventured further, the atmosphere shifted again. Laughter faded, replaced by an unsettling silence. Suddenly, the wagon jolted to a stop. "What's going on?" someone shouted, and the guide looked around, confusion etched on his face. "This never happens," he muttered. Just then, faint giggles echoed in the distance, followed by the sound of hurried footsteps. My heart raced as I glanced around, trying to see what was happening, but all I could see were the shadowy shapes of pumpkins looming around us. The guide tried to reassure us, but I could see fear creeping into his expression. Just then, a cold wind swept through the field, sending shivers down my spine. I leaned forward, peering into the darkness ahead. A shape darted past the wagon, moving quickly and almost gracefully. "What was that?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. The guide hesitated, his eyes scanning the darkness. "Probably just some kids messing around," he replied, but the tremor in his voice betrayed his unease. Suddenly, a soft cry pierced the air. It was a child's voice, desperate and lost. "Help me," it echoed, sending a chill down my spine. My friends and I exchanged worried glances, our excitement replaced by dread. Then, one of my friends, Mark, jumped up. "Let's get out and see," he exclaimed. Against my better judgment, I followed him and the others as we stepped off the wagon, our feet crunching on the dry leaves. We ventured into the patch, the air thick with tension. As we moved deeper, the giggles grew louder, but they sounded hollow, almost mocking. I glanced back at the wagon, but it felt like we were already too far gone. Then I saw it. A group of shadowy figures in the distance, their outlines flickering in and out of view. I could make out their pumpkin-shaped heads and skeletal limbs, and my heart sank. "Guys, we need to go!" I yelled, panic surging through me. Before I could react, the figures began moving toward us, their movements swift and unnatural. The laughter echoed around us, and I felt my legs freeze. Mark grabbed my arm, pulling me back toward the wagon, but the shadows were closing in. As we ran, I could hear the whispers growing louder, the voices begging for help. "You shouldn't have come here," they cried, their tones filled with sorrow and anger. We pushed through the patch, racing toward the exit, my heart pounding in my chest. Finally, we reached the wagon, and the guide was frantically waving us back inside. We jumped on, and the driver took off, speeding away from the haunted patch. As we looked back, I saw the shadowy figures standing at the edge of the pumpkin patch, their eyes glimmering in the darkness. I didn't stop shaking until we were safely back in the parking lot. That night, as we drove away, I couldn't shake the feeling that we had awakened something in that haunted patch. Some secrets are better left buried, and I would never forget the terror of that Halloween night.